It's a top city office some say has outlived its purpose and feel it should be eliminated. Yet, more than a dozen candidates now want the job. This morning, meet three of the leading contenders vying to be New York City's next public advocate.
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
Good morning, everyone. There's a special election coming up in the city in 3 weeks on February 26th. It's to fill the vacancy in the Office of Public Advocate, a vacancy created by the resignation of Tish James, who is now the state's new Attorney General. Some want to abolish the office, which serves as a watchdog over city government. The public advocate also is first in line of succession for the mayor. A crowded field, there are 17 candidates now, and they're seeking the position. The election is nonpartisan. Candidates cannot run on any existing party line like Republican or Democrat, so they had to come up with their own. We've introduced you to 6 of the candidates on the top tier of the ballot on previous broadcasts, and this morning we'll hear from 3 more candidates where they stand on the issues and why they deserve your vote. Brooklyn Councilman Jumaane Williams, who is running on the It's Time, Let's Go ticket. Queens Assemblyman Ron Kim, he's running on the No Amazon banner. And City Councilman Rafael Espinal of Brooklyn running on the Livable City line. Now, each of these candidates has qualified to participate in next Wednesday's Leading Contenders debate. I have to tell you, this program is not a debate. It's an opportunity for you to state your positions and why you're qualified for the job. So I'd like to begin with this first question. There are people, and there was a bill introduced to City Council last year to abolish this office, saying it's outlived its usefulness. And there are some who say it really has no power to affect change. So, Councilman, why do you want the job?
Well, I think they're wrong on that assessment. It has a lot of power to create change. This is, by the way, the first time I've heard of someone saying an office is not as powerful as we'd like it to be, and the answer to that is not giving it additional powers, it's getting rid of it. So if you want to say that the public advocate should have subpoena power, or that it should have an independent budget, I definitely agree with that. But the position as it stands right now has a tremendous power as an ombudsman, a watchdog over the city, as a charter cop to ensure that all agencies are doing their jobs mandated by the charter. Mark Green, who is the first public advocate, we're proud to have his endorsement, has spoken clearly about why this office is still important.
Assemblyman Kim.
I mean, just like the rest of the country, Marvin, the city of New York is facing one of the worst problems, dealing with crumbling infrastructure, subways, lack of affordable housing, lack of quality classrooms. This is the time we need someone who can stick up for the public. Instead of executives, instead of governors and mayors giving away billions of dollars to the richest man on the planet, Jeff Bezos and Amazon, mega corporations, we need to invest every single dollar back into our people. And I feel like the role of the public advocate in front and center can make sure we can advocate for every dollar to be reinvested.
And you feel you have the power there to affect the change?
End corporate giveaways and to make sure that every dollar is reinvested back to the people.
Councilman?
Yeah, I mean, the public advocate has real power. We have the power to introduce legislation and get it passed. I like to tell people that the public advocacy is like your local city council person who's advocating for you on the behalf of the entire city. You know, we have someone who's responsible of holding the mayor accountable. When the mayor is irresponsibly wasting our tax dollars, we're supposed to speak up for you. When the services are not being delivered in your district, we're supposed to speak for you. And I question anyone who doesn't believe that an independent office that's supposed to be the voice of the people shouldn't exist.
Okay, there were 3 major issues as I see it in the city right now. There is the crisis in public housing in NYC. There's the mass transit, particularly the aging subways, and there's the homelessness crisis, and of course the political issue of Amazon. So these are 4 areas I really like to get into. Let's begin with NYC. And yesterday we came in and we had approval for a federal monitor. This is the forerunner of a federal takeover. Do you see it? And do you see this as a good move?
Well, first I want to be clear. 2 of those are uniquely connected. We have a tendency to talk about homelessness and housing separately, but the answer to most homelessness is actually housing. So I want to connect those. And NYCHA is a part of the affordable housing crisis that we have. The question is affordable to who? This city, when it comes to NYCHA, has earned a federal monitor. The problem is I don't trust this federal government, nor do I trust this HUD secretary, but we also have reason not to believe in the current city administration or the current state administration. Now, the problems that have occurred long before this administration, but both of the men who run the state and the city actually worked for HUD. The governor was the HUD secretary. He hired Bill de Blasio.
Do you see this as a positive move?
So I see it as a positive step, but I'm not sure without changes, much more changes, including making sure that the tenants are a part of the decision making, we need more money and we need real management.
Let's hear from Senator Kim.
Children are literally dying of lead poisoning every day, and their solution is to fix that in a 20-year plan. We're going to take care of the 6-year-olds less, but 20-year plan to fix the entire problem of lead poisoning is not acceptable. The compromise and the deal that they came up with the feds and the city, it's not good enough. We have to work harder. We have to allocate more resources, and it's all interconnected. How do we get the money and funding? Instead of putting Band-Aids, instead of focusing on symptoms, let's get to the root problems, which is the lack of funding. $3 billion to Amazon. Put every dollar back into NYCHA, MTA, and the people on the ground that need it desperately.
Where do you stand on this issue, Councilman?
NYCHA needs $40 billion in order to do the repairs needed for those tenants to be able to live a life with dignity in their apartments. Adding a federal monitor just convolutes the conversation and the problem. We need less bureaucracy, less red tape. We need real action. Right now, looking at our state taxes and our city taxes, Wall Street is getting $11 billion per year back, rebated to them. That money could be used to fixing NYCHA over the next 5 years.
Do you feel this move is just a Band-Aid?
Oh, it is. But by the way, we almost were in receivership. So I'm glad that we didn't get receivership because that would have been the worst.
Is that the next step?
I hope not.
What do you think?
No, I mean, it is definitely a Band-Aid to stop the bleeding. But you want to fix NYCHA, again, we need to find new revenue stream. Not just Amazon. The city of New York spends $1 to $3 billion. The state of New York spends $8 to $9 billion of corporate giveaways. Stop that and give it back to NYCHA. And
I would have been more excited to see what the judge would have come up with, because that judge was actually going down a path that had real quality controls and had real accountability. And so I'm sad that he's cut out.
I mean, I would say that, it's embarrassing that we got to this point. The reason we got to this point is because of a lack of leadership from past leadership and current leadership. And they should have been held accountable. We as the public should ask more from them. And we have to make sure in the future we elect leaders who are going to think about long-term solutions.
But you're talking about accountability. Should Mayor de Blasio be held accountable for the failures, for the neglect at NYCHA?
100%. He should have been held accountable.
So the short answer is yes, but we have to be clear. Before Mayor de Blasio, the governor, before Donald Trump, there were lots of people, Republicans and Democrats, who allowed NYCHA to wallow to the place that it is today. We have to hold the current people accountable because the governor has not provided the money that he should have. And the mayor and his administration deceived us on management of NYCHA and on lead crisis, and they have to be held accountable.
Before I break,
for
let me
that.
go back to Councilman Espinal, because part of your campaign is holding the city accountable for NYCHA. How would you do that?
Well, first and foremost, we have to look at where the money is going. And if you speak to people who actually work in these buildings, they'll tell you there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of money being bled out to outsourcing of contracts that could be used to fixing these apartments. There's no reason why certain projects should cost millions of dollars, which numbers can show, contracts can show, could be done at a much cheaper rate. But we need to find money and really invest into NYCHA.
Money is always the issue. We got to take a break. Come back. I want to talk about mass transit, talk about the problems on our age-old subways, homelessness, so much more, so many issues in the campaign for a public advocate. We'll be right back. Back now with Councilman Jumaane Williams, Assemblyman Ron Kim, and Councilman Rafael Espinal. They're all candidates in the upcoming special election for public advocate. We talked about public housing. Let's shift to the other problem, crisis in New York is transportation, particularly our subways. And they're so old and they're dilapidated. Ceilings are falling, tracks are not working, signals are not working. What, as public advocate, would each of you do to correct this problem?
Well, I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. There's a plan that was proposed by one of our opponents to use, cannabis revenue to fix the MTA. We all know that you can't sell enough weed to be able to pay for anything in this city. So we have to look at other real ways to get real funding into the MTA.
What would be your way?
Well, I do believe we have to look at Wall Street. Again, we're giving $11 billion to Wall Street in rebates. Imagine you filing your taxes at the end of the year and expecting 100% of what you paid in taxes at the end of the year being returned to you. That is what's happening in Wall Street. We have to go after that. making sure that that money is reinvested back to our infrastructure where it belongs.
All right, Senator.
We did this to ourselves. It was decades of underinvestment, multiple administrations. That means we can redesign our system to work better. It's about finding the revenue, consistent revenue stream.
Where would you find it?
I will find it from multinational mega corporations that want to come here to do business. They should pay fair taxes to be in the state of New York. We give away, again, up to $15 billion a year as a state to some of the biggest corporations and corporate giveaways, reinvest that money right away into our crumbling subways.
Councilman Williams?
So hashtag Cuomo's MTA. Last year I ran for lieutenant governor. When I traveled around the state, I realized transportation is an issue around the state. The state is failing. However, here, obviously, in the city, it's a massive problem. And part of the solution is funding. It's also management of MTA. Included in the plan that I had when I ran for lieutenant governor is something that the council member also mentioned, which is Wall Street. But I had more added on to it. $20 billion, whether it was millionaire's tax, whether it's a stock transfer tax, $20 billion that the state can shift right now to fund things like management, like MTA. But also, we have to be clear that this is a state agency. The governor controls it. If the city is going to give more than the 60% of the budget we already give, we should have some additional control.
All right, let's talk about two things that are on the table. The governor wants to have congestion pricing. The mayor wants to have a millionaire's tax to deal with the subway crisis.
Well,
where do you stand on that?
I'm looking at the budget right now in Albany, and there's absolutely no transparency by the MTA. They have no details of how they laid out congestion pricing, and they want the lawmakers to sign off on it. I feel a little uncomfortable signing off anything that we have no idea how it's going to be set up for the future of state of New York.
How do you feel about the mayor's millionaire's tax?
I feel like that's a much more progressive way of looking at this, making sure that people are in a better place to fund our system, including the bigger corporations. You know, we need to look at the wealthier class and the bigger corporations to help make sure that we fund the right revenue.
Well, I mean, I'd just add to that. We have to look at where the money is going. You know, just recently there was an article about how the MTA is, again, outsourcing contracts to clean our subways for over $9 million.
So congestion pricing or a millionaire's tax, which would you favor?
You know, I think those are just both Band-Aids, and we have to look at a more holistic, comprehensive picture of how we're going to deal with the issue. Again, we're in this situation because past leadership did not make the right investments, and now we're just responding to crisis instead of making the right investments.
We have a tendency to do this. You know, stop presenting an argument of both and giving us none. Give me both or at least one of them. What we allowed to happen is people think congestion pricing will hit them, but most of the people who are watching this do not drive into the city during rush hour. And whenever they want to go to hit a piggy bank, they hit the piggy bank of strap hangers. And so we have to make sure we are fair. And so people who drive into the city, only the people who drive into the city during rush hour, which is not most of the people who are watching this, should have a fair share as well. They're adding to congestion, and they're the only ones who aren't helping with the situation.
Let me move on to a question. Councilman Espinal, you advocate reform of cannabis, yet you said a moment ago you don't sound like you advocate the legalization of marijuana, as one of the other members here suggests would provide the revenue to fix the subways.
I'm 100% behind legalizing marijuana. I'm not supportive of using that revenue to fix the MTA. That revenue should go back to those communities that suffered most because of these laws that have over-enforced upon, especially communities of color. It should be used to invest in our schools. It should be used to create jobs, especially in neighborhoods like East New York and the South Bronx, and making sure that those folks, especially young people who have been criminalized because of these laws, can finally be able to have a path to a good life.
Yeah, and I agree with the councilman on that front. And I would add further that instead of adding some of the rigorous licensing programs that the governor is proposing right now, which would put up to 100,000 license to conduct business in cannabis, we need to make it accessible to some of the neighborhoods that suffer the most. By doing that, we're actually creating big cannabis, just like any other big corporations, to come in and extract as much money and wealth out of our communities, and we can't allow that to happen.
So look, I've been talking about legalization of marijuana since my first term, but we can't talk about legalization, which we should, without talking about the expungement of records of people who have been arrested and have a criminal record based on marijuana. We can't talk about without making sure that the money, as was mentioned, is going to the communities that were ravaged by over-policing. And lastly, we have to make sure that the people who have been touched by the criminal justice system have access to the dispensaries. Right now, the way it's set up in this city with medical marijuana, they explicitly say that people who have been touched by the system cannot access it. And that is unfair because you now are making something legal that someone has been imprisoned for and not giving them the ability to benefit from the legalization. So that just means there's going to be a cycle of people finding things to be able to bring revenue into their city, while other people now who never were over-policed have all this access to it.
Let's just add, it's not a lot of money. These aren't billions of dollars that we're going to be seeing every year. These are hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's why I truly believe that it's not a real viable option in fixing the MTA. We have to make real investments in the people that suffered the most.
Let me move on to another area. Senator Kim, you're working on part of your campaign is to eliminate student debt. And this is a big issue in your campaign. How would you do that?
Yeah, there are 1 million New Yorkers right now that suffer from student debt. It is the second highest category of household debt, and we're walking into another economic crisis, just worse than 10 years ago that we faced in 2009. So we can actually help buy, write down, and cancel student debt as a local government. It's been tried and done in 50 over cities over other forms of debt. I plan on using the power of eminent domain to allow our city to come in and buy and cancel student debt. I have an entire plan online at ronkim.nyc that lays out a vision of how it could be executed.
Now, whoever wins this special election is going to have to file that very day of the election to get into the primary in June, to get into the election for November. So this is only a couple of months that this position will be filled. Currently, acting as Corey Johnson is acting public advocate. Isn't it a waste of taxpayers' money to spend something like $23 million for the special election when you have to run again in a couple of months?
So one, I just want to make sure that we say that this is a wonderful program to try to get rid of student debt. And as public advocate, I'm hoping to use my skill set of raising issues and the powers of the public advocate to try to get that done. This is a waste of money. The law should be changed so that this type of special election so close to a primary doesn't happen. But insofar as that this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do. Whoever wins in February is a public advocate until December 31st. And whoever wins the primary then finishes out the term.
It's a daunting challenge to be running a citywide campaign back-to-back in a couple of months.
I don't think it's ever happened before.
I don't think it's the first time it's
the first citywide special.
Yeah. First citywide election, but this is the setup, and we're participating. And it's a beautiful thing. You know, we get to collaborate on all these issues and come up with some progressive.
A lot of money out there.
Issues.
I mean, you're usually told that elections are a marathon, not a sprint. This is a sprint and a marathon. So we have to prepare for both. You know, eat our energy bars.
All right, don't sprint. Sit right here. We'll be right back. Take a break. Want to talk about homelessness and also about Amazon. We'll be right back. Back now with Councilman Jumaane Williams, Assemblyman Ron Kim, and Councilman Rafael Espinal, all candidates for the upcoming special election for public advocate. With so many, you have different labels, different tickets, different names, and it's nonpartisan, but you're all Democrats. It seems that all Democrats but one are in this race. Isn't there a possibility you're going to cancel one another out and the Republican can win?
You know, in the general election, maybe if you had that more people coming out, but I think because this is a special election in a cold day in February, whomever can pull the most people out are coming. If people were coming to the poll anyway, perhaps, but I think the people who are coming are only coming for the one person they want to vote for.
I definitely think this is an issue-driven campaign. It has nothing to do with whether you're Republican or Democrat, and the campaign, what you're advocating for is what's going to drive out the people. So I'm hoping that...
I do have my concerns, and as a Democratic city, I hope all Democrats come out to vote and vote Rafael Espinal.
Hope the weather's a lot warmer than it is today, right? Okay, let's turn to the other crisis in the city, homelessness. And in the position as public advocate, what would you do to get those homeless off the street? We have 60,000 each night in these shelters.
Well, first, I want to be clear that unfortunately we have two commissioners, different homelessness housing, two deputy mayors, two different plans, and there's a problem. And so the answer to most homelessness is housing. But I always want to make sure we're clear on what we're talking about because not everyone homeless is the same. So most homeless people are working. They can't afford the apartment they're looking for. Then you have a subset that has domestic violence issues. They need additional support. Then you have people who have substance abuse issues. And then the last subset are the people that most people think about when they think about homeless. Some of the street homeless that do have some mental health problems. So we have to make sure we're sectioning it off and providing what's needed for each one of those groups. And primarily, housing is a big one.
I also think we need to take a very inclusive approach in fixing this. The mayor has gone to different neighborhoods and taken an entirely top-down approach without consulting any of the local elected officials, community boards, and civic groups, and that's why we're having some conflicts around the city around homeless shelters. We need homeless shelters to put some band-aids immediately in these cold weathers, but we can't achieve that if the mayor is taking a top-down, non-inclusive approach, and that's something that we need to fix right away.
There are real questions that we need to ask this administration. I think the public advocates have to play an important role in that conversation. One, why are we paying $400 a night for homeless families to live in hotel rooms when we know that money could be used for them to get a nice habitable apartment? Two, why we continue to build homeless shelters? We should be building real housing, affordable housing. So
We've heard that. We hear that all the time from politicians when they're running. We need more affordable housing. We know. So if you were in the position of public advocate, what would you do immediately to get them off the street?
I will, look at the most recent proposed plan by the mayor. He wants to build over 90 homeless shelters across the city. 90 homeless shelters can easily be turned into 90 buildings of affordable housing where families can be able to live and pay an affordable rent.
But look, the rent regulations are coming up in June. We have to have a public advocate that makes sure that we're fighting to strengthen that. There's something called mandatory inclusionary housing, which is the basis for all of the terrible rezonings people have heard about. I'm one of 3 council members to vote against that. I'm calling for a moratorium on most rezonings until we fix that so we can get more affordability in there.
Yeah, we also have a bill, my colleague Andy Hevesy has a bill to make sure that we can subsidize some of these folks before they go homeless. So if we can actually give a supplemental rent, and we have the data before they're in the streets, we can also save thousands of people right away.
New Yorkers have to also be reminded that almost 40% of the folks who are homeless actually have jobs and have real families. These are folks who just need access to an affordable apartment. They're not homeless because they don't have a job. They're not, there are folks who are in that situation, but there's a lot of people living in our homeless shelters because New York City has become unaffordable and unlivable.
Okay, I want to turn to the political issue of Amazon. Now, their decision to locate a second headquarters here in New York, at the outset, it was supposed to be a win-win. Instead, it's turned into a political battle. They promised to bring in 25,000 jobs and average salaries of $150,000. Seemed to be a slam dunk, but it's anything but. Why?
Well, this is a terrible, terrible deal. I'm so disturbed when I see the mayor and the governor sitting down for Amazon, but not for fixing the NYC and fixing the MTA. It is not a done deal. They represent the people. They are not the people. And the public advocate needs to make sure we shut that down.
This is the people's money, $3 billion, that they unilaterally decided without consulting anyone. I was the first ones to call them out on it, and I've been actively campaigning against Amazon coming from Queens, and I plan on doing so as a public advocate.
What's even more disturbing to me is there are folks who signed a letter 2 years ago asking for Amazon to come to the city of New York, and now they're posing a deal which some of us knew was a bad deal to begin with. And we have to make sure, moving forward, that none of our tax dollars continue to subsidize these corporate companies.
Have a couple of seconds left. I want to give each an opportunity to make a closing statement. Councilman Jumaane.
Well, thank you. I am an activist elected official. I went from community organizer, tenant organizer, to a council member. I was told that I had to choose, and I said, no, I don't. The best elected officials are activists. So I'm asking people to go to JumaaneWilliams.com, learn about the 54 bills that I've gotten passed. Many people don't know that. They see me in the streets, but I get things done. Please vote Jumaane Williams on February 26th.
Assemblyman Ron Kim.
Our subways are crumbling. We need more affordable housing. Our classrooms are struggling. We need to end corporate giveaways to make sure that we're focused on the root problems, not the symptoms that many of my colleagues are dealing with. Vote for me, Ron Kim, that NYC. Please, thank you.
Let's get the last word from Councilman Rafael Espinal.
As a born and raised New Yorker, I am super concerned in the direction we're headed. I'm running to make sure New York City is more livable for all of us. There's no reason why a working family that lives in our city, that wants to raise a family, live the American dream, cannot do so. My parents immigrated here from the Dominican Republic, and they were able to buy a home, raise 6 children, and make sure I went to college. Every family should have the opportunity. Currently, it will cost you $125,000 to be able to live a life comfortably in New York. We have to change that conversation and put real leadership and a real plan to change that.
Okay, 3 of the leading candidates for the office of a public advocate, the special election coming up, of course, February 26th. We have Councilman Jumaane Williams, Assemblyman Ron Kim, Councilman Rafael Espinal, and thank you for sharing your positions with us and letting the voters out there know why they should vote for each of you. So
Thank you, Marvin.
Appreciate it.
So good luck. This was a very healthy conversation. Good to have you on the program. And that'll do it for the program for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website, pix11.com/News Closeup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.